Hey, welcome back. So today we are going to go ahead and make a simple house in Maya 2022.1. Since the last video series I made, which was making a simple ant using Maya 2022, they came out with .1, which kind of changed the startup part of Maya. A little bit of the user interface is a little bit different, so I'm going to go ahead and start from the very beginning for that one. So what this project is going to be is it's going to be us creating kind of like this house that you see right back here behind us. A little bit simpler. We're going to work on a one-story house, simple roof line, just to kind of get the feel for the tools and some of those other things to get you started out here in Maya. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what that looks like. You can see right here in Maya that basically it's just a little simple house, 4 walls really. There is an interior in this one. We're not going to get into that with this series. We're just going to make the outside walls, roof, get some windows, door, make some door frames and things like that. Some simple stuff to make a little house that can be then simply do the UVs and add texturing to it, and then also bring that texturing back here into Maya and render it into Arnold. And then the next thing is to use those same UVs, apply a different material setup that will allow us to export it into Unreal Engine and then apply materials in Unreal Engine again in that process. We'll import the house 2 different ways in Unreal Engine. We'll use the same textures that we will create in Maya to put the house into Unreal Engine, and then, like I said, we'll do the second set of materials and put them on that way, just so you can kind of see the difference of the process and also kind of the difference in the kind of the way you can control the materials between the 2 different systems. And we're going to use Bridge for both of these. So Quixel Bridge, Quixel Mixer to do the materials. So it's going to be a little bit of a process. This first video is going to be about just kind of getting everything set up and starting to model the house. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, things have changed a little bit in Unreal Engine, or in Maya, sorry. I can save this. We can go ahead and open up our new project. So here's the kind of the difference with Maya 2022.1, this interface. From here you can do quite a few different things. You can set your project. You can open up a current project that you already have. You can also open here, and you can also create a new one. You can also go straight to Maya without doing any of this, just by using this little blue button right up in here. Also, there are some tutorials that are embedded into this as well, so those are kind of cool if you want to play around with those. So what we're going to do is we are going to start a new project. So I'm just going to go ahead and put new here. Go to File. We're going to go to our project window, and we're going to give this a name. So this is going to be, I'm just going to call this Simple House. I can type correctly. Simple House is going to go into my D drive, into my Maya projects, along with a lot of my other projects. And we're going to go ahead and accept that. Now, just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and set the project, since I had a few other things opened up, and I'm going to go find our Simple House project. And then, let's see, let's go ahead and save this scene just to get us started, so we can just hit Control S from here on out. All right, so let's go ahead and call this one Wow. Okay, simple house model. And several different ways that we can do this. Like I said, so what I'm going to do is, since I want to kind of capitalize on reinforcing a lot of the tools that I showed you in the bug video and in the bug video series, as well as the tool sets, we're going to kind of do this a little bit differently. You know, we could do things like using our poly models and create some individual different walls that were not connected together, separate floor, separate roof, which we're going to do some of that. The walls are all going to be connected. The floor is going to be separate. The roof will be separate but connected to itself. And then we're going to end up using UVs to kind of do the other stuff that we want to do. And the reason why I'm going to set the walls up as all one piece is as we start to do the texturing here, one of the things that will make it easier if we do this and leave them as one piece is when we do our UVs and we connect our UVs together, we can kind of get a better lineup of our texture from one side to the next and kind of get this brick effect looking a lot better than if we did them individually, which we can still make it work. Don't get me wrong, we can make it work by doing them individually. But then we've got to play around with scale as well as a few other things, get alignment correct. This way it'd just be quick, simple, and easy. So let's go ahead and get started. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a floor. I'm just going to use just a simple cube. Let's not do that. What I want to do is I want to expand it on just the one plane, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this little cube out to the side here, a little square. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit, and I don't want my house to be so square, so I'm just going to go ahead and give it some length this way. Kind of make it like a single-story rancher. We're not going to make this house a two-story, we'll just make it a single-story. And give it some more scale that direction. And I'm just eyeballing this. There is no real plans. We can always go out and we can find some reference images on the internet. If that's easier for you, then I recommend doing that. But I am just showing you some of the modeling techniques right here, and the rest of it kind of follow along with later. So now I've kind of got the length and the rectangle that I want. What I'm going to go ahead and do is bring up another cube. And notice I have these on having no subdivisions. Basically, they're set on subdivision 1. So if I double click on the cube here, you can see that subdivisions are set to 1. You can always go back and reset this. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to control the actual loops, or the edge loops, and the segments that are in my model. And by limiting the automatic fill part of it and the segments, that is going to allow me to decide where I want these edge loops to be. And the reason why I'm doing that is to cut down on the amount of geometry that is actually in my model. So let me go ahead and scale this now. I'm going to scale it a little bit up like this, a little bit, and let me see here. Go ahead and play around with it until I get the height that I want. And let's see here. Thin this out a little bit. Like I said, this is going to be a rancher, so the sides of it is going to have a roof line that follows along the length of the house. Pull this out a little bit to line up so I can kind of get a feel for the height and the width. Okay. Set this down on overlap it just a little bit there. That'll be all right. Okay, so this is the beginning, and what we're going to do is I'm going to use edge loops to create these two walls here and this additional wall down here. Now what we could do is we could also duplicate this wall and set it down here and then just connect the two in between. But like I said, I'm wanting to practice some of the tools that we've learned. So let's go ahead and in the object mode, if you hold the shift button down, right click, you can get the insert edge loop tool. I'm going to select the little square box right here. I'm going to hover over the end there. And when I do that, that brings up my tool set. The other place that you can find your edge loop is up here under your mesh tools, right here, insert edge loop, and this is a little option box that would bring this window up. Okay. And I want to make sure that I'm set at relative distance from the edge because I want to control where I'm going to put these in. And we're going to put it in something like that so I have the relative thickness that my walls currently are. And I'll put one at this end. Something like that. and it might be a little bit off, but this is a good start. I'm going to hit Q to quit that tool. If I double click on one of these and hit W, if I don't like where it's at, I can just pull it down. I can adjust it just a little bit. Same thing here. All right, so now I've got them kind of lined up the way I want them to be. I'm going to close that for now. The next thing we want to do is we want to extrude this down the length of our model here. Okay, so what we're going to do is set this up so that I go into right click, go into my face mode, select here and here. And once I have those two faces selected, so I click on one, hold the shift button, click on the other, I can hit Control E to get my extrude tool. And that's going to give this little tool set up like this, okay? I have this little control here so I can change the orientation of it. But what I'm going to do instead of using the tool in this mode, which is the default mode when it first pops up, is I can also, as long as I have it set on extrude, I can use my regular base tools. So my move tool, my rotate tool, and my scale tool. So I'm going to hit W and put this in the center so I have a little bit less chance of kind of making some mistakes. I can pull it straighter. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull that straight out from there. I'll pull it all the way to the end. Line it up right there. We can always come back and fix these alignments just a little bit later on. Alright, so once that's done, I now have this kind of box looking thing. I'm going to go ahead and hit Q to quit that tool. See the tool tray over here on the left hand side. Whatever tool I'm using is the one that's highlighted. This is my extrude tool. When I hit Q, it goes back to my selection tool. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and I do want to put in some more edge loops, so I need to go back to my object mode. And I'm going to go ahead and hold the Shift key, right mouse button click. I know that I'm in the mode I want to be in, so I'm just going to go ahead and select the tool. I'm going to put in an edge loop towards the end here. Something like that, okay? So now I have this edge loop set in. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Something like that. We can always thin that out a little bit if we need to. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and quit that tool. So here's my edge loop tool. I'm going to hit Q. It's going to quit. Go back to my selection tool. Right click. Go back to face. I'm just going to select one face though. Control E to extrude. W to pull this out. I'll pull it all the way down to right about here so I'm close. I'm going to hit Q to quit. So I'm no longer in my extrusion. You got to be careful when you're extruding so that you don't accidentally end up with a double face. If you hit Control E and you click off and you lose the tool and you hit Control E again, you're going to end up with two faces right on top of each other. And that's going to cause you some problems with Maya and your geometry. So make sure you're not doing that. If you accidentally click off of it, just go ahead and hit Control Z to undo. Go back to it and then pull on the face to see if it will extrude. If it doesn't, Control Z, then hit Control E again. Do not keep hitting Control E on top of each other because you're going to end up with multiple faces. That is a problem because then you end up with multiple edges in the same spot. Okay. All right, so with this face selected, I'm going to hit delete and delete it because the other thing we don't want is to accidentally put faces in on top of each other by the way we're modeling. So I'm going to go ahead and delete both of these faces. We could have left one of them, but there's no real need for it because it's going to be behind this wall section that we won't see. And we're going to end up using a target weld to connect these together. So the way we're going to do that is first we're going to hit 4 on our keyboard and we're going to go into the wire mode. So 4 allows us to see everything kind of in a wire frame effect. I'm going to right click and go to what's called vertex, and now I have these little purple dots on the corner. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to connect this dot to that dot, that one, and then these down here. The reason why I went to the x-ray mode is because these are underneath the other model of the floor. We can't see them, but in this mode we can, and we can manipulate them. So now I'm going to use the target weld tool, which is this tool right here. This little, well, it's a target weld tool. So anyway, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to hover over the vertex I want to start with. I'm going to click on it and pull it over. I'll pull it over. Pull it over and pull it over. And we may have a slight taper in this wall, but that's going to be okay. We can fix it if we need to. All right, so with that done, if we hit 6 on our keyboard, we go back into our shader mode, and we can see that now the walls are all connected. So we've done our first setup of getting the first parts of the wall done. The next thing we want to do is we want to set in some cutouts. The reason why I left the floor detached is because we don't need additional geometry across our floor that we're not going to end up using. So basically when we put in edge loops to cut out the walls, the windows in the walls and the doors in the walls, we don't want to have that additional lines running across our floor back there. So, and also any edge loop that we set here is going to also go against the opposite wall if we do that. We don't need that either. We only need them in certain places. So having our floor separate is going to make this a little bit cleaner. All right, so let's go back to our object mode. Select our, hit Q to quit that tool. Should have done that first. Go to object mode. There we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our edge loop tool. Again, we're just going to go ahead and select it. Actually, we're going to go ahead and do something on the ends of our walls first. So I'm going to go ahead and select that option box. So pull up the option box. What we want to do is I want to put a edge loop right in the center of these end walls. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and select my multiple edge loops, and I'm going to change this from 2 to 1. This tool, when it's set up this way, what it does is it puts that edge loop right in the center between the two ends automatically for you. No matter where you click, it's automatically going to click it right in the middle for us. Okay? And I'm going to do the same thing down here. Okay? So now I've got this edge loop set up, and what I'm really after here are the vertices that are going to allow us to pull this up so that we can modify the peak on our roof. So now I'm going to go back to relative distance on my tool here. I'm going to select my relative tool right here at the top. You can also click reset the tool. It sets everything back to default. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to put in a few more. I think I want my door to kind of be here on this house. So I'm going to select this kind of here. And the door height is going to be something like that maybe, since this is a rancher. And then I'm going to put in some windows. So maybe right next to the front door. This is maybe a living room. So I'll put some windows in here. A large window. We can come back and we can always adjust these after we see what they look like. And I'm going to put another edge loop in across this way. Now one thing we got to notice is that when we're putting these outside edge loops in, we're not getting the inside edge loops, and that's because these walls are all connected. It's putting them all the way around this direction. So we are getting some geometry that we may not necessarily use, but what it's doing is it is setting it up so that our window height will be consistent around our house, and so will our door height. So whatever decisions we make for the height of the windows, we can get that set up. But that's going to cause a little bit of a challenge because we also have to put matching edge loops inside to be able to cut these out completely. So let's go ahead and jump over and do that real quick, since this is probably going to be the consistent height that I'm going to have for my windows and my doors all the way around my house. We may add one or two later that we can easily come back in and fix, but for right now, let's go ahead and take care of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap my space bar. It's going to bring up my different viewpoints, and I want to select my front viewpoint, and I also want to select my side viewpoint. And for those two, I'm going to go into my wireframe mode, and then here on my house, I'm just going to leave it like this, doesn't matter, in my perspective view. And I'm going to put in an edge loop right here, and when I look in my other viewports, I can see that I can line it up with my lines in those particular viewports. So I can line that edge loop that I just put in inside the house with my bottom one, and then I'm going to do the same thing for my top one right here. Kind of line it up. My mouse pad's a little sticky, I think. There we go. All right, so now I've got edge loops inside and outside, and this is going to make it so that we can cut through to the walls. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate what I mean by that with this door placement that I have right here. So what we want to do is we want to be able to have it so that we can cut all the way through. Okay, so I'm going to quit for a second my edge loop tool. Don't worry, it's hanging out right here. We can come back and select it pretty easily. I'm going to go ahead and right click, and I'm going to select face, and I'm going to delete those faces that are right here that I created for my door. Now that is going to cause a problem with some geometry, and it's also here on the bottom part of the wall that we're going to have to take a look and see what we need to do to fix that. We may need to hide the floor to be able to do that. So that's basically kind of the cutout, and we're going to have to fix this geometry that has these holes in it right here. And we'll come back to do that after we finish setting everything up for our windows. Okay, so now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a peak in for my roof right now. And actually, let's go ahead and do our edge loops for the walls, for the windows first. This will make it a little bit easier on us. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back into object mode. Hold the shift button down, right mouse button click. I'm going to go ahead and go into my insert edge loop tool. And I'm going to go ahead and start putting in some windows kind of in the middle of each of these. All right. And something like that. Big window there. I think I'm going to put a sliding glass door in, maybe across from the back of my house right here. So maybe something like this, make it a little bit bigger. Another window right here in this area. And as we start to lay out our rooms, you know, if you were going to turn this into an actual house model with inside rooms, you may come back in and need to adjust some of these. All right, so one thing I want to talk about real quick, if you put in an edge loop and you decide you don't want it, okay? You accidentally put it in there and you don't want it, you can right away hit Control Z to undo it. But if you've moved along a little ways and Control Z is not something that's going to work for you because you have quite a bit of other modeling that you've done, you realize, you know what, I don't really want that edge loop. There is a proper way to delete edge loops or edges in general, okay? So if you have an edge and you want to delete it and you just hit delete, it's going to get rid of the edge. But we have a problem. See right here? This line is broken, and if I go into my vertex mode, you can see that I have these orphaned vertices right here. They're just kind of hanging out, okay? That's not good. We don't want those. Now you could, if you did this, what you could do is you could come along and you can highlight them and you can delete them. But if you have a lot of those to do, that's kind of a pain. So the best thing to do is to avoid that in the first place, okay? And so what you would want to do is you want to actually select this and use the Control Delete, and it's going to delete that entire line along with the vertices. See, they went away. So we don't have any more orphaned vertices, and if I go back into my edge mode, you'll see that the lines are actually complete now. So that is something you want to try to avoid. Do not have any orphaned vertices. Okay, now that we've got everything kind of set up, I am going to go ahead and set up my house so I have this kind of a peak here going for my roof. I'm going to go back into my vertex mode, so right click and hold, go into vertex, and I'm just going to kind of peek these up like this a little bit so I can see them. I'm going to do a marquee select, so left mouse button click, hold and drag, and that's going to get my top two vertices there. And I'm going to hit W. I want to make sure I have all four of these, so the top ones, this two and those two. I'm going to drag this up. Oops. And that's one of the problems with doing all of these vertices. So, a couple of things we could do is we can undo this, or we can go ahead and slowly start to bring our peak up together. If I had not put these vertices in first, or these edges in first, I could have just drugged this up and it would have brought the whole ridge up, but then we would have had to have compensated for some of these other lines. And now that I think about it, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So, sorry folks, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back into my edge, and I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these edges here, except for the center one. This is a not too difficult thing to do right now at this point. All right, so now with all of those selected, I'm going to hit Control Delete, and now I'm just left with these last two center lines. All right, so back to my vertices, because this is actually going to be quicker to do it this way than to go back and try to slowly do it. Now again, this is a rancher, so the peak of the roof isn't all that great. It's kind of a gentle peak like this. All right, so now what I can do is go ahead and put my edges back in. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to object mode, right click, shift and right click, there we go, insert edge loop. I'm going to put these back in. Okay, so I'm going to put here, 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 and here, and something like this. Again, we're just making this exterior of the house. Later on down the line, we may use this house in other projects to kind of build the interior out. It just depends on how good this house is and how flexible we can be with it. All right, so now we've got all of our edge loops in. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate something real quick. So you don't have to do this, but I do want to show you this. Now that we've adjusted this roof line here and we pulled this peak up, what's going to happen is when I put in an edge loop, you'll see that this edge loop is now going to want to follow that peak, and as I get towards the straighter line, it flattens out. So it's going to try to follow the geometry automatically for us, okay? So those are some things that you have to keep in mind. If you want to put an edge loop in after you already do this to set certain things up, that's something you got to keep in mind. Okay, and you're going to have to go back in and adjust those vertices. Okay, so all that's done. I'm going to hit Q to quit my edge loop tool, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into face mode, and I'm going to select everywhere that I want to cut out, and just click on the face right in that center area and delete it. So we're just kind of getting our cutouts in. And I think I'll do it there. They don't have to be symmetrical like this, but let's see here. This was where my sliding glass door is going to go in. I think this was going to be a window here, a bigger window over here, and here, here. Don't forget to select both the inner and outer faces to be able to get those cut out. Okay, so now we've got just a basic, simple house frame. And what we're going to do is we need to fill in all of these holes here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to object mode so I can see what I'm working with underneath the floor down here. I'm going to select the floor and hit Control. Let me see, if I select the walls and hit Control 1, we'll do that. Hit the walls and select Control 1, okay? And what that does is that just hides things that we haven't selected. It'll be easier to bring back. Another option could have been select the floor and hit Control H and hide the floor. But if we forget to bring it back, then we got to go looking for it. Not difficult, but something that we don't really want to get stuck with doing. All right, so now what we want to do is we also want to delete this kind of face that's hanging out here by itself on the two spots where I have my front door and my sliding glass door. So if you have this face like this, go ahead and delete that. We don't need that anymore. It's a piece of geometry that's hanging out that's going to cause some issues later on anyway. So we'll just get rid of it. The next thing we want to do is we're going to go into our edge mode, and we're going to start bridging these holes. And it looks like I forgot to put a window over here, but I'll do that on my own later. I'm going to go ahead and show you the method to do the bridging, and then I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to keep watching me do this, and let you practice it, because you know, you're going to just have to do yours on your own speed and own time. You don't need to keep watching me do it. But I'm going to go ahead and do this door and show you what the process is, and you can watch how it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and select the edge, and I'm going to go ahead and select the next edge, and select that edge right there. So we only want the edges on either side. And then up here there's this bridge tool, this one that looks like two band-aids on top of each other. So we're going to select that, and it's going to bridge that hole for us. Okay, be careful, make sure you only select the edges that you want, and then once you use a tool one time in Maya, it sits over here in our tool tray, and now what you can do is you can hit G, and it'll repeat the last tool used. So I can select these and hit G, and it will repeat that over and over again until you move on to another tool. So that is what it should look like when it's bridged, okay? Make sure you don't have any crossing happening or you select the wrong ones and it creates some kind of ugly broken geometry. You want to skip that. So I'll let you go ahead and work on it from here. Again, select one edge, select the other edge, and hit the little bridge tool, which is these band-aids up here, or you can hit G after you use it the first time and just keep doing it that way. All right, I'm going to pause now. I'm going to fill in all of my holes that I have throughout my geometry for my house. I'm also going to put in another window. Okay, so now I'm back. I've got most of it done, and hopefully you've got most of yours done too. Now I'm going to show you a little technique that you're probably going to be mad at me I didn't show you earlier, but I thought you should have some practice. So if I double click on this line, it's going to highlight everything around my window. You want to make sure that it only highlights those. And if I hold the shift button and double click the other side, it should do the same thing. Make sure it doesn't highlight anything else. And if you hit the bridge tool or G, it should automatically bridge everything around there. Now sometimes it doesn't, or you get a mistake, it does a cross connection or something like that, or it tries to fill the hole in. So in those cases you'll have to manually select them. The other place to not do that in are in openings like this, where you have a bottom edge on either side, because what it'll do is it'll try to fill this in a kind of a crazy manner, not what you want it to do, because it's also going to include that bottom edge. We only want the opposite edges to bridge. Okay, so now our house is coming along pretty good. We've got our outer walls, we've got our roof line set up, we have a floor, so if I hit Control 1, bring my floor back, see that it fills in where those holes were for our doors. The last thing we're going to do for this right now is go ahead and create the roof line. So we're going to create a roof for this that'll have our house roughed in. The next video we'll talk a little bit about making some modeling for the doors and windows, putting in some window frames and things like that, and then also some other details, and that'll pretty much finish off the modeling. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that roof on. I'm just going to go ahead and use another cube. I'm going to pull that up. I'm going to hit W on my keyboard, bring it up, kind of above everything, and I'm going to switch to this viewport, take a look at my top down. You can see my little tiny cube in the middle of all this. What I want to do is I want to make it so that my cube hangs over either side of this direction here and out this way, but not into this two quadrants up here. So I'm going to go ahead and first change into the correct mode, and I'm going to pull this out a little bit, and you can see that the cube starts to grow. All right, and the other thing I want to do is I'm going to thin this out so it's not so thick. So I'm going to push it down, something like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and start lining things up a little bit. I think something like that for maybe the overhang, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab it out this direction a little bit. My house isn't quite centered. That's okay. Go ahead and line this up. And I think I want more of an overhang, like that. And at this point, I'm not sure what the overhang for my roof will look like. I'm going to go ahead and extend it just a little bit more. Drag it down. Kind of line it up like that. All right, so now I've got that kind of set up. I'm going to go ahead and hit E. I'm going to rotate my model in the correct planes. Let's see here. Let's take a look at my channel box. And I'm going to rotate it this way, just the x-axis. I get kind of the view that I want, and we can take a look here. And I'm way off on my angle. Hit W. What I want to do is I want to move my roof based on the world, not on the object. Right now you see that if I were to move this, it was going to move it kind of downward in this direction. I want to push it straight down. So easy way to do that, double click on the tool that you're using, in this case the move tool. I'm going to change it from object to world. It's going to change the direction of my gizmo. I'm going to push it down so that it's right along the edge of my roof so I can better visualize this. I'm going to rotate a little bit. I can zoom in if I need to see it a little bit better. so I can kind of match that angle. It also gives me a good idea of how far out my roof is hanging, which I don't know, it might be okay. We'll have to see. You might have to push the roof back just a little bit. I'll show you how to do that. You also see that it's kind of a little bit hanging over here. Actually, I think it's okay. All right, we're okay there. And in fact, we may need to bring it up just a little bit. So I'm going to hit W. And what I want to do is I want to go back to my object mode now. And I want to push my house, my roof up so that it lines up with that line right there like that. So that the very top piece, that vertice right here, is going to line up. Not what I wanted to do. Line up right around that point right there. And if I hold my middle mouse button down, I can drag it without having to use the gizmo until I get it lined up the way I want it. And all right, so I think I've got it the way I want it. So what we're going to do is we're going to mirror this roof, okay? That'll make it easier for us and it'll give us the proper angle on our roof here. So I'm going to go ahead and close this move tool for right now. What I am going to do is I'm going to go up, and it's up here under, it's under Edit Mesh, and it might not be under Mesh Tools, Mesh, there it is, under Mesh. It's one of those. So all of your tools that we're using right now are going to be under your Mesh, Edit Mesh, or Mesh Tools. We also have a Mesh Display, which we haven't really gotten into. Maybe we will if we have to reverse a mesh or something. But anyway, so all of our mesh right up here. We want to use the mirror tool, which is under mesh, and I want to use the object box here. Okay, I'm going to select the option box, and I'm going to set mine back to default, just so you can see what my settings are. So real quick, I'm going to determine which direction I need to mirror. I want to go over here into this quadrant here, and since I've kind of got everything all moved around, I believe I'm in my z-axis, and I want to move it in the negative z-axis. But let's just double check. So if I grab it and I push it up this direction, that's going to go into the negative up there. So I want to go in my negative z direction. Okay, Control Z, push it back. So do that, double check what your settings are. Now, last time with the bug, when we duplicated the legs, we turned off this combine with original. This time we want to actually combine this with the original. We want this to become one piece. We're going to use the world, and we're going to go ahead and select Z. We're going to put it in our negative directions, and I'm going to hit apply, and if I did everything right, we should end up with a roof that is already connected for us right here. And if I go into object mode, select it, you can see we have a center line that's nice and neat right down the middle. Wrong button. Hit the right button. There we go. Okay, and if I hit 4 on my keyboard, you can see that our geometry came out pretty nice right along there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close my mirror. I don't need it right now. I'm going to hit 6 back on my keyboard, and we've got the start of a house. We may need to adjust the roof line a little bit later on, but we'll see. And we may want to make some modifications. Maybe we want to put a deck, or maybe we want our longer roof line. I don't know. So anyway, we'll go ahead and worry about all that stuff in our next video. And in the next video, we're going to, like I said previously, we're going to finish out modeling the house and get everything kind of all set up for that. Didn't want to make this one too long, especially since I'm getting into some information about tools and techniques and things like that. So it tends to take a little bit longer than just saying move this vertice, move things over here, things like that. Also, if you liked my video, please go ahead and give me a like, subscribe to my channel, and put a comment down in there. Tell me what you think. If there's any feedback you want to give me, that's great. I appreciate the feedback. I also see here in more modeling that we've kind of started, but we've got to also start to identify what these different pieces of our model are. Don't forget to save. And that's going to be it for now. Again, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all next time.